Corbolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Corbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Pro Physique Code. Today we are minus Evan. Evan's taking a sabbatical.
Yes, Evan's taking a break for this week out of town, so it's just Paul and I holding down the fort today, and we're going to do a nice Q&A, which I feel like everybody always likes the Q&As because we get to hit on a lot of different topics, so I think it's good.
Yeah, and we both had busy weekends coaching. I was in Fort Lauderdale for on Saturday was the Ultimate Grand Prix, and on Sunday was the Extreme Grand Prix, which is just a natural competition, which is, a month out from Ben Weider. But I have some pretty interesting takes from that. And then, Lexie, you had a couple competitors, correct?
Yeah, I did. I had two first-timers get on stage in the States, and then I had a competitor in Europe who missed her pro card in Fit Model by one. Joanna, she lives in Portugal, but she did the Euro Naturals in Spain. So that was pretty cool because it was our first her first, I guess, national show, if you so will, and she missed her pro card by one. So that was, kind of exciting. Obviously, depending on how you look at it, but she's fired up. So I'm excited for her potential.
Yeah, I find the pro cards with Fit Model, they can be a bit of a double-edged sword because I've had a couple competitors turn pro and then there's nothing left for them to do.
That is a great point. And it makes me wonder too, like the girls that turned pro and Fit Model very early on in the year, that had to be kind of tough too. I mean, I guess it depends on the person, but yeah, I mean, it's like you can't really, I mean, a lot of bikini pros, I feel like they turn pro and then not all of them, but they go on to do a pro show kind of close
Yeah.
afterwards to see where they stack up. But it's like for Fit Model, they haven't really officially announced the first Fit Model show, have they?
No, I've been trying and trying to sort that out, but it's been impossible. So
Yeah.
the rumor is Pittsburgh in May. I've heard that from multiple people, including the people in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just feel like there's a lot of competitors just kind of like in a holding pattern. I had the first um, Fit Model Pro in the US this year in May, Daniela. So she's been sitting. So she did two shows. The weekend before we did the Florida Grand Prix where she won the overall. Then she got her pro card the next week, and she's been sitting around since May. And I actually said to her, I said, well, we could do a bikini show if you want, because you're not a, yeah, I don't know. I don't think anyone's tried to do that yet. But she was like, no. So she's just been in a building phase. But I will say I'm excited for her because last prep we had to lose like 25 pounds. She's stayed within like 10, 12, 15 pounds of stage weight. So like she's putting on muscle and she already had that great shape. So as soon as something comes up, I think there's a lot of competitors that are going to be chomping.
Oh yeah, I'm really excited to see that next year. I am. And I was thinking, okay, because I said something in last week's podcast, and I think a couple people commented regarding it, but I was thinking this past week, and I'm like, do you feel like there's almost this like in between phase now where there are some competitors who they're too small for bikini, but they're almost too big or too muscular or hard for Fit Model? Like there's almost like this in between phase. And I feel like that's where a lot of competitors fall. And I know last week I mentioned that I personally feel like, bikini pros, like recent bikini pros that are going to do Fit Model next year, like feel like they'll have to significantly downsize if they want to fit that Fit Model criteria. It's almost like they fall in that in between. So it's funny. I feel like there's now this like in between Fit Model and bikini, if you so will.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting who gets in that first call out of those first couple of Fit Model shows because the judging has been pretty different from national show to national show. I don't even really count the local shows because sometimes we're only getting 8 or 10 competitors, so sometimes it's not a good sample size.
No, that's a great point. I had a girl reach out to me last week and not my client, but she asked me a little bit about like what are they looking for in fit model because she said she felt like her placing at a local show didn't make a lot of sense. And I said, not for nothing, not to downplay the winners of local shows, but again, you like you said, it's a small sample size. And I feel like if you really want to get a good grasp on what the fit model criteria is right now, looking at like the national show class winners and pro card winners is more like what you want to kind of look at for the standard.
Yeah, and I mean for my bikini competitors that were, I've had a couple girls turn pro in bikini this year, and my goal is to get a couple more before the end of the year. I'm still pushing that, really tight tie-ins, really capped shoulders, but still keeping them full on stage, which means you almost have to be overly conditioned. So to me, there is a very clear distinction. Like if I have a girl that starts to show a tie-in in fit model prep, the cardio's dropping and the food's going up. Like we're just going to start filling in from there. Whereas in bikini, it's been pretty rare that I've ever said like, "Oh, we're getting too lean." Like it's almost like the leaner the better.
Yeah, yeah. And there is that essence too, where it's almost like being a little too lean off stage. Usually that looks really good on stage. Like,
Yeah.
as weird as it sounds, it's almost like if you're perfect off stage, you may be a little soft on stage. So I think
Yeah.
that's why I always tell competitors it's okay if you feel a little too lean, like before a show, or a little too small, because usually that'll equate very well on stage.
Yeah, you when you see a really conditioned competitor up close, their face looks a little gaunt. They
Yep.
looks like their clothes are hanging on them. I mean, this is what people see when they see the bikini Olympians in person. They're like, "Oh my gosh, they're so tiny." And I'm like, "Yeah, they are. They just have the bubbly muscle to go with that really good conditioning." So, yeah, I think it's getting to me, it's pretty clear. I don't have any issues with what's going on with Fit Model. The only thing you don't know is just what direction they're going to go. But again, this weekend at the Ultimate Grand Prix, the competitor that won the overall and Fit Model, I knew it the second I saw her backstage. She just had shape. She had beauty. She was lean but not hard. She didn't have a lot of muscle, but when she hit a pose, she had great structure with a little bit of muscle.
Yeah, and I've noticed that too because I think too, some of the girls recently that I've had doing well in Fit Model, and and they're not the most muscular girls. And I even had this discussion. So one of them that competed this past weekend, it was her first show ever, and a couple weeks ago, she was really getting in her head, and she's like, "I just feel like I have no muscle." And I told her, I said, you have to remember, Fit Model is not. They're not looking for that bikini level of muscle, and she placed first in her class this week at the show she did. So I've noticed that you don't have to be the most muscular to do well in Fit Model, but shape, structure, beauty, and presence and confidence with posing, I feel like that makes a big difference. Along with like a really tight waistline, I've noticed that that's important as well. Not anything that looks like just weird or off-putting, but like a really tight core. I think I've noticed that they really like to see that as well.
Yeah, it's a very pleasing look. It looks great on stage.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we were all concerned or I'm not sure how the beginning of the year how this would go. I see it as an entry level, and then there will be some competitors that'll outgrow it and naturally. And I've already had some girls be like, "Coach, I want to go back to bikini. I want to go put on some muscle." And I'm like, "Cool." So I think at least for the foreseeable future, it's going to be very, very positive for the sport. I don't know what's going to happen with figure now because that's kind of a division that when I go to these shows, like there's sometimes less than five competitors in figure. Like it's getting to be a very niche division, almost like women's bodybuilding,
Yeah.
um, where like when you see the upper levels of the sport, there's a lot of them, but at the lower levels, you got to wonder if these promoters are, getting annoyed having an overall trophy that they're spending all this money on for a five-person class. Wellness has been doing well too, I've noticed.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, you bring up a great point with figure. And I mean, even fitness. I think a lot of people, I don't even think a lot of people know about fitness because it's like you don't see it at
It's
local
pretty
shows.
rare. I mean, most shows you don't even have a competitor doing fitness these.
No, you don't. And I feel like I don't really work with a lot of figure competitors and maybe have one or two every once in a while, but usually with those athletes, like we are very strategic about what shows we're doing, like at a local level. Usually we're trying to pick the shows that are like pro AM shows, because otherwise, if it's just kind of a local, in your backyard show, you
Mhm.
do run the risk of like potentially being one of three competitors, at the show
Yeah.
in that division. And most people don't really, most people don't want to just compete against one or two other people.
No,
So
no.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I feel like last year, December was the month where they announced Fit Model. So I feel like that'll probably be the month again this year where they probably announce just some new things for next year. Maybe not new divisions, but just probably the first Fit Model Pro Show and just, some new things for next year. So that'll be exciting.
Yeah, I haven't been tracking the men's numbers like I did the women's, because obviously what we've seen with the bikini numbers at the national level and the local level has been a huge decline. So the fit model has been kind of filling that gap, right? I mean, almost perfectly. Like if you, I don't know if we talked about it last time, but at the Amateur Olympia, there were 66 in the bikini division. Last year there was 99. Well, this year there was 44 in fit model. So that means there's actually more females between those two divisions. So is bikini and fit model going to be like a 50-50 thing, or some do, one or the other? Because they're not allowing you to cross over. But
Right.
I've heard a lot of girls tell me lately, like the reason they liked fit model was because they could just go get an inexpensive suit, do their own hair and makeup, and feel good about getting on stage. Whereas, the entry level for bikini is still, you're into $1,000 between suit, heels, uh, hair, makeup, like it adds up pretty quick.
It does. Yeah, there's a big difference price wise between the fit model and the bikini suits. And I think it's nice too, because like I had a girl recently, she's doing fit model and she was kind of torn between like what color she wanted to do. And she's like, you know what? They're cheap enough. I'm just going to get both colors and we'll just kind of see which one I like. So yeah, it'll be interesting. But yeah, I think you want to get into some of the questions that we got on our
I
Instagram.
do want to add one thing.
Yes.
So this weekend I was at a show. It was a 2-day show. They had NPC, or untested bodybuilding, on Saturday. They had the drug tested bodybuilding on Sunday, and there were more competitors at the natural show.
Really? Okay, that's kind of cool. I
Now,
like that.
before we get too excited about that, one reason being there aren't as many natural shows, and it is one of the last shows to qualify for the Ben Weider, right? And the promoter also does pay entries. If you win your overall, you get a paid entry. But I just found it interesting that that happened. That's a pretty good
Yeah,
sign.
that's really cool. Yeah, I guess the only other natural show that we have in Florida for the year is, correct me if I'm wrong, but is the Atlantic Coast Natural Show,
Mhm.
which you and I will most likely both be at that show.
Yeah, I'll be at that one. Natalia won that overall last year.
That's right.
I didn't even, I just realized it the other day. I kind of swept all the bikini overalls in Florida last year at the end of the year, because Alexandria had won the Florida Grand Prix and the ultimate and then Natalia had won that. Alexandria had won the Battle of the Body. So I'd won a bunch. And both Alexandria and Natalia are now pregnant.
Oh my, I knew that Alexandria was. That is so funny. But you know what? That's honestly really cool. That's a testament to how you prep your athletes too. The fact that they're able to, you know,
Yeah, they both made decisions, that they wanted to start families, and so
yeah.
I thought it was awesome. I was a little bummed that Talia did not do Ben Weider, but I was also like, you know what you want to do, and so she's in a good spot. So I think she'll get the itch one of these days to come down.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah, I'm excited for Atlantic Coast. I love going down to Fort Lauderdale.
Just we'll
Yeah,
we'll go to Brett's gym. It'll be a nice weekend, and the weather's always nice in November in Fort Lauderdale.
it is. Yes, it is. Cool. Anything else before we get into some questions?
No, let's go. I heard you got a bunch of questions, so let's
Yeah,
rock.
I got some good ones. Well, okay, here's a quick one that I just want you to more so address really quickly. So somebody asked, because usually the podcast like sponsor at the very beginning, we have Core Nutritionals, who's our sponsor. So we have the little ad at the beginning for Corbolic. So somebody asked, can you just quickly break down like the benefits of Corbolic? So I'm gonna let you take this one over.
Yeah, Corbolic is it's basically what I notice when I take it is that my strength and recovery improve rather rapidly. And so I usually take it for about 4 weeks, and then I'll take a couple weeks off. I do notice that it kind of plateaus a little bit. And every time that I come off and go back on, I just notice an immediate benefit. So yeah, and I think the person was asking, is it okay for women? Absolutely. These are natural over-the-counter supplements that are just going to positively impact your effort, that you're putting into the gym, um, and they're not going to give you any problems if you are competing on the natural side of the sport. Core Nutritionals is founded by Doug Miller, who is a world champion natural bodybuilder. So he does have a really strong presence with making sure that these are, you're not going to get in trouble for using them in any natural organizations.
Cool. Okay, cool. Yeah, I wanted to get that one out of the way with first, since we always have the ad at the beginning about that.
Yeah.
So, okay, so this question, I like this one. It's kind of controversial, but well, maybe not. So, what are your thoughts on influencers becoming prep coaches?
I mean, I think it's a pretty natural progression. And, if someone is getting a lot of attention and people are reaching out to them, I think at some point they're going to say, well, sure, I'll coach you. It took me a few years of people asking me before I felt confident enough to do it. Of course, I reached out to my coach, who was Lane Norton, and I said, "Hey, if I take on some clients," and he supported it. He said, "Yeah, you should do it. You have the right temperament. You have the right, you know." And I said, "Well, will you give me some support?" And so that's kind of how we built Pro Physique, was people that were interested in coaching, but maybe weren't confident doing it on their own. And then so you get a group of people together. You're kind of learning from each other. So an influencer, it really just comes down to their background. I think a lot of people think of coaching as, I don't know, it's not easy. And that's, you know, the hard part is, like, just because somebody looks great or even has a successful client doesn't necessarily mean they're a great coach. It means they might have great genetics and their first client has great genetics. Is somebody able to repeat their results? That's really what I look for in a coach, right? So, uh, yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I think I've seen a lot of people get really popular and really good at coaching, and then they kind of burn out.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think it also depends, like, what do you define an influencer as, right? Like, are we talking somebody who just has a YouTube channel, or are we talking like I guess it depends on the definition. And I do feel like, to your point, it's not. I think you have to consider, like, don't just hire somebody because of how they look, right? There's a lot of influencers out there that they have this really fancy camera. They look really awesome, when they post pictures or reels of themselves. And I think a lot of people, that follow them are attracted to that. And they think, oh my gosh, this person looks so great. I'm going to have them coach me, right? But sometimes we forget how somebody looks is not reflective of how they are as a coach, right? Especially if that person, like, an influencer who competes, works with another coach. They may just be genetically gifted. They may have another coach who that coach knows what they're doing. It doesn't necessarily mean that the influencer is a good coach. So, yeah, but no, I would agree with you. I feel like coaching, true coaching, not just being somebody who gives somebody macros and says has a good week, like, it is tough. I mean, it's very rewarding. But I think, if you're somebody who is interested in maybe hiring somebody who is a bit more well known or an influencer as a coach, I think my best piece of advice would be find some clients that they work with and just get some, like, just word of mouth, like, see how those people like working with that coach. Have a phone call with the coaches, do your research beforehand.
Yeah, even the word influencer didn't exist when I started. I mean, Lane Norton, who is by all means, huge following, over 1 million on Instagram. Obviously, he would be considered a popular influencer. But that word, I think, came about because, like, marketing companies were like, "Oh, let's hire these people because they're influencers." We're all influencers. Every one of
Right.
us are an influencer. So, like, it has a bit of a negative connotation. And, people will comment on my YouTube videos and they'll be like, "Oh, well, of course you look the way you do. You're an influencer." And I'm like, "No, I just started making videos to help people. This is what I've been doing for years." So I almost don't like being called that, because I think it has turned into a bit of a negative connotation. But, I mean, from the first time I ever did a bodybuilding show, of course, even the people in my gym were like, "Hey, how'd you get lean? Can you help me?" "Oh, okay." So I was influencing them technically, right? Like,
Right.
um, so we're all influencers in a way. Um, yeah, I would be weary of people like that. I always tell people, like, you can tell somebody is a coach by going to their page. Is
Yes.
it self-centric or is it client-centric?
No,
Um,
that's a great point. And I know that's something you've always told me too. And I think, yeah, I totally agree because I feel like true, like quote unquote influencers nowadays, you kind of go to their page and it's more of like, pictures and reels and posts of themselves. And then also like a lot of product promotion. And hey, you know what?
yeah.
If that's how they make their money, that's great. But that could be a little bit of a red flag if you're never really seeing them posting their clients, their client transformations. Like if it's always just about themselves or, hey, use my code, or use my code for this launch, that could be a little bit of a red flag.
Yeah, that to me would be more of a marketing, like an actual, influencer that's involved in the social media side of the sport. I post mostly stuff about clients and helping people understand more information about the sport, the divisions, whatever it may be. And I'll be honest, I struggle to even post. When you get busy as a coach, I'm not going to stop and spend an hour editing a reel when I've got, updates to do. So it's
No,
like it's a
totally
double-edged
agree.
sword.
Totally agree. It's like, yeah, I will go into the day and I will sometimes write like, make an Instagram post or whatnot, but it is easy to just get busy with, check-ins and programs and like that's I will always prioritize that over social media. But it's funny that like makes me think too. It always baffles me like I've never had an account, I've never posted on it, but like there are some people that just spend a lot of time on like Reddit, like coaches. And I always think to myself, how do these people have time? Like if you're truly as invested into your clients and your job as you say you are, like how do you have time to sometimes go on these platforms and comment these long things or always be commenting on things? Like I don't get it. But anyways, topic for I guess another time.
Yeah, I've seen some odd things on Reddit, like coaches after prejudging replying to people on Reddit, and I'm like, yeah, how damaged is your ego if that's where you are right now? Um,
Right, right. Yeah, it's interesting, but no, I think that covers that question. I think that was a good one. And I mean, I think it's very prevalent with kind of what we see now, because I mean, social
yeah.
media influencing
But
is
I'll say this, just because somebody has a big following and they decide to start coaching, they might find out that that's their thing. Like for me, when I started coaching, the first time I went to a show with a client, I remember being like, "Oh wow, I really like this." It's kind of like the first time I did a bodybuilding show. I was like, "Oh wow, this was a lot of fun. I want to do it again." And likewise, I have some people that'll come up to me at expos and they'll be like, "Yeah, I've got all these clients. I hate emails. I hate talking to my clients." I'm like, "Why do you coach?" Like,
right, right. And I feel like there's a thing too where you see a lot of influencers more so taking the route of having like these programs, or like, challenges where it's not as one-on-one coaching focused, but it's more for people that just maybe want
sure,
like a one-off training program. Like I feel like a lot of influencers have that. And hey,
yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. Don't confuse that though with one-on-one coaching, because I remember I had a client a long time ago, years ago, and she fed into something like that thinking it was going to be like one-on-one coaching, and it was really just kind of a one-off program that she was sent. So a lot of influencers do have those, and again, those can be great. I wouldn't necessarily say those are great for somebody who wants to prep, but like that could be great if you're just looking for a one-off kind of situation.
Yep, and that's good information to have before you get too deep into that stuff. We do a challenge, but it's because we ran out of ways to impact people. Like we only have so many clients we can take on one, and our challenge I love because I think it provides people a platform where they can set a goal and a deadline without having to get on a bodybuilding stage, which is,
Yes.
I realize not everyone's going to do that.
No, I really like our challenge too, because I'll be honest, I feel like sometimes challenges get a bad rap, with like people thinking, oh, these people are going to crash and burn. But I noticed like I think like four challengers that I'm coaching right now. And all of them, when they started with me, were very kind of keen on like, I'm using this challenge as a bit of a springboard into my long-term goals, right? So they're not just looking at it as okay for 90 days or however long I'm going to go all in and then afterwards just kind of go off on my own. Like they're more so looking at it as a springboard, to greater things, which I love. I think like if you use a challenge and look at a challenge that way, I think that's one of the best ways you can look at it.
Yep.
Yeah. So, okay. So I have another question that is interesting, and I know my answer to this, but I'm curious to hear what you think. So, This person asked what to do if cardio gets so high in prep that it cuts into your sleep, meaning you're getting less than 7 hours. Should you just suck it up or adjust your plan?
So here's what I would do. Instead of doing that much cardio, increase the intensity or the output of the cardio, right? That's where I don't always love it. Sometimes we got to get on those stairs.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I would definitely agree with that. That would be my first thought is increase the intensity of your cardio. And then I guess my next kind of thought, because I feel very strongly on, I mean, if you look at research studies out there, if you're chronically getting below like 7 hours of sleep, the rate at which you are losing that lean body mass, it's like it's kind of scary. I remember I did a presentation a couple weeks ago on a Zoom call with my clients and I shared a statistic and I can't remember the numbers, but like it's kind of scary how much muscle you can start to lose if you chronically are getting, below like 7 hours of sleep. So that is something I feel like is important in prep to maintain that level of sleep. So I would say either increase the intensity of your cardio or increase your overall step goal or your NEAT activity, because that's another thing that you could do throughout the day very passively that doesn't necessarily require that you're spending more time on a cardio machine.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, like I have a client now, I'm working with her because, she has very limited time during the week. And when I bumped her cardio up, she's like, well, that's going to cut into my sleep. So instead of doing that, we're using the weekend to do two cardio sessions. So you can look at strategically how your week is laid out and what days you have more time available. So it doesn't need to be like 45 minutes every day. It can be 90 minutes, 2 days a week. And that way, the rest of the week, you don't have to do the cardio. So yeah, I mean, these are strategies that experience is really helpful with as a coach. And, going back to the influencer stuff, if you work with an influencer who's giving you a cookie cutter plan and you ask a question like that, you're probably not going to get a good answer. You're probably going to get told to just shut up and follow the plan. I had someone recently reached out to me for coaching, and she had she had questioned her coach's meal plan, and his answer was, "You don't ask a surgeon how he holds the scalpel, so just follow the plan and be quiet." I was like, first of all, you're not a surgeon if you're handing out meal plans to everybody. But
That's insane. Yeah, yeah, but yeah, there's definitely different strategies. Sometimes I'll give clients like a total minute count of cardio for the week. So to your point, so that way they
Mhm.
kind of split it up how they so choose. I mean, I never want anybody abusing that, like doing, all their cardio in like 2 or 3 days. But so like to your point, it can be nice if they can capitalize on getting in like maybe double cardio on the weekend. So that way they have a little bit less to do throughout the weekdays. So yeah, there's just definitely some different strategies to that, but I would definitely say sleep in prep, especially as you get deeper into prep. I mean, if you're chronically getting below that 7 hour mark, like you're gonna feel it. I mean, a day or two won't hurt you, but after that, like you're gonna feel it. Your recovery is gonna suck. Your inflammation's gonna probably
I
go
mean, your
up.
your hunger is going to be higher. We know that.
Yep.
Cortisol increases, hunger increases, cognitive function will decline. Obviously, your performance in the gym will decline, and then that's going to have a downstream effect because then you're going to start to feel like defeated. So yeah, I would never have someone who has a crazy work schedule skip sleep for cardio.
No, no. And I mean, honestly, if any coach out there tells you just suck it up, like do your cardio in your sleep doesn't matter, like in my opinion, that's a big red flag. So
Yeah, I don't think many people are doing that, but
yeah, I don't think so either. I don't. Okay, so this is an interesting question, and honestly, I don't know the answer to this necessarily. This literally just came through, but I want to ask it on here because I know this client, she's my client, but she listens to this podcast. So she said, for dark-skinned athletes and tanning, she says, when I got my tan, my husband said he didn't really notice a difference. So is it necessary for all dark-skinned athletes? So I don't know. That's actually a really great question because
well, I've coached some extremely dark-skinned athletes where, yeah, you really just want to put like a sheen on. Um, like just like the stage bronzer, just so you get that, like it evens out the color. But it all depends on how dark the athlete is, because there is such a thing as like so dark that you kind of blur out some of the details. It's kind of rare. Um, but even, most people don't realize just how dark stage dark is.
yes, yeah. But no, I thought that was a good question because I was like, I guess that is like a good point, but I guess it depends on how dark you are. That's why I say it. I think it pays to just go through the host tanning company in that situation, because they're always going to usually color you in a way that's going to make like ensure that you will fit in on stage, right? Like if you kind of do things on yourself or by yourself, you do risk getting on stage and looking like a complete outlier. So I think in this case, I would just go with the tanning company, and if you may not need you may not need two shades compared to some people, but they'll make sure that you fit in if anything.
Yeah, and even my athletes that use the host tanning company, I usually suggest that they purchase a DIY kit and put a layer or two on before going to the show, because if you don't get sprayed until Friday night, it can kind of be too late if you need multiple layers. Whereas if you put on a coat Wednesday night and Thursday night, you're going into Friday, they can kind of adjust based on you. You can rinse, you can do whatever you need to do. But yeah, the host tanning company, especially in Florida, shout out to Hotspot. Um, that lady will bend over backwards to make sure you look great on stage. And I've seen multiple instances where she's even helped out my athletes that did not even use her services. And when I went to pay her after, she said, just keep it. So she's been really helpful.
Good. Yeah. No, she's great. I've also had really great experiences with like Protean. Anytime they're at a show, they will do the same. They will like literally bend over backwards. But I mean, to your point, I feel like yes, it does help to have like a DIY base coat, especially if you're a very pale athlete, because you kind of have to you have to look at the tanning processes like you're staining your skin, right? So if you're super pale, like translucent essentially, and you're waiting till Friday to get that first coat, you don't have enough time to really stain your skin enough, right? So that could be an issue. So yeah, I think it can help to kind of start that process a couple days early, just to kind of start that staining process, if you so will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But interesting, good question. Okay, so another question. Okay, so how many pounds naturally could you gain as a natural athlete during an off season?
Man or woman, how many years training? Like here's the thing I don't love about that question.
Mhm.
You don't know until you try.
Yeah.
I'd say for a beginner, like myself when I started lifting weights, I was probably the first year I started lifting, I probably added 10 pounds of muscle, maybe more. But I am a very genetically gifted athletic male. Like I played baseball and basketball and I played all these sports. So when I started lifting weights, I noticed shoulders. I noticed all my body changing pretty rapidly, eating in a surplus and just training like a meathead. Um, so I would say for men, 1 to 2 pounds per month for people that are not very well trained. For women, probably half that, half a pound to a pound a month, for beginners. But it's the weird thing about bodybuilding is that the scale doesn't necessarily change that much, but the look is just so different over time. And when you think about a pound of muscle, go to the store and grab a pound of ground beef.
Yes, I love that analogy. Yes. Yeah, no, I mean, I think realistically speaking, for most females like that you and I work with, most of them have been, I mean, if they're competing, most of them have been living this
Yeah.
lifestyle lifting for quite some time, right? So they're well past that like newbie gain era where you're gonna put on muscle a lot more rapidly. And I think like I've seen some female athletes get in their head about this too, of like thinking, oh my God, I'm not building quick enough. But like it is a slow process. But as much as we don't want to sometimes admit this, like a lot of it can be genetic too. Some people just naturally have higher testosterone, and if that's the case, they're going to put on muscle a lot quicker than, those who have lower testosterone, right? I mean, I can think of clients that I'm working with right now, and a few of them, oh my gosh, like they're not new to the gym, but genetically they just put on muscle so quickly, whereas other people like they put that same amount of muscle on in double the time, right? I also think it depends too on like how intentional are you being with your diet, with training intensity, right? Some people think that they're putting themselves in a position to build muscle effectively, but they're kind of cutting themselves short. Maybe they're just going into the gym and kind of playing around, going through the motions. Maybe they're kind of doing a little bit more free eating. And hey, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you need in a season of your life, but you're also not going to really be able to maximize your natural ability to put on muscle if you're just kind of half-assing things like that.
100%. It's one of the things you learn really quickly about bodybuilding is that most people are really good in prep. They kill it in prep. They're hitting their meals, they're hitting their workouts. As soon as you take away that contest goal, the workout intensity frequency suffers, the meal, intentional meal eating kind of suffers. And so they almost only really execute in prep. It's one of the benefits of, for those who don't know, I just turned 50. My birthday was this weekend. And I've noticed in the last year or two, I've actually been able to continue adding muscle because I've been so freaking consistent. I don't always, hit a PR or do those kind of things, but I have not missed a workout in several years. And it's just starting to accumulate where I'm noticing these benefits. So, yeah, are you able to be consistent? That's really what it comes down to because muscle building is, I mean, it's a time limiting hobby. You can't have 10 perfect workouts and build as much muscle as somebody had 10 years of perfect workouts. It's just time. And it can be frustrating for competitors because it's like, yeah, you just need to shut it down, go put on muscle, and come back in a year or two or three, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, and then that can be tough for like younger competitors too that get into the sport really young. I had a phone call with a girl last week and she did very, very well in her first season. She's super young though, and I was like, what was your feedback after your last show? And she's like, the judge basically just said, I'm still a baby. I need to just go, add that density. And unfortunately, like that just takes time. That just takes a couple of years putting your head
Well,
down.
and this is where I think a lot of athletes get into you know, I don't want to call it a trap, but the trap of drugs because adding in, TRT, testosterone, other derivatives, Anavar, things like that, it will make that shorter. You will put on muscle quicker, but at what expense? And is that muscle going to stick around when you pull all this stuff out? I saw a competitor this weekend who just turned pro at North Americans, and I could tell she was off everything. I mean, she looked like she was half the size, and I was like, wow, it's really strange.
Yeah, and you know what? And to that point though, like that's it doesn't surprise me that that's why we hear, certain people will say like that they become kind of addicted to the PEDs because it's like you get addicted to not necessarily taking them, but like the look that you get when you take them. Because for a lot of people, depending on how much they're on, when they come off, they look like a completely different person, right?
It
And
would, I listen, I've never gotten involved in them, but I can only imagine how that would feel to put on body fat and lose lean body mass by coming off stuff, because it does mess with your hormones for a while. You look watery, softer. You're going to lose some strength, and then to go in the mirror and look and just see like, ugh, what is happening? Um, the one thing about natural bodybuilding that I've, been doing for so long, I keep everything that I get. Sure, it takes a long, long ass time, but I never have had to deal with that sudden shift in like looking like crazy good and then looking horrible.
yeah, you don't have to deal with those up and down swings. And I think, honestly, I think for females, I'm not saying it's not hard for males, but I think it's really hard for females too to always be seeing those up and down shifts. So, yeah, and I mean, to your point, and again, that same client that I had a phone call with, she actually asked me, she's like, do you think I should, would you recommend PEDs? And I was like, and she looked so great for the short amount of time she's been building naturally, and she's so young. And I was like, honestly, no, there is no need. You're so young. You just spend a little bit more time, a couple more years building. And, but I do feel like this is where, yeah, you see that trap of younger athletes, wanting to kind of speed things up and then they go that route and it can be a slippery slope for sure. So, yeah.
That's
Did you
it.
have any, did you have any questions that you wanted to get
Yeah,
to?
I had a question. Someone asked me why don't more people compete in wellness versus like bikini and fit model?
Well, I mean, I think the number one thing is it's very much so a genetic kind of game.
Yeah.
Like, not, I mean, I hate to say it, but like, not everybody is built for wellness, right? It is very much so genetic. And I think, and I know you probably hear this all the time too, Paul. You'll get people that say, oh, I think I'm wellness. My lower body seems a little dominant. And then they start to lose body fat and they realize that's just where their body likes to hold body fat is in the hips and in the glutes because I would say about 80% of females, that's where we hold our body fat at. So, I mean, I think that's the number one thing is mainly because it's genetic kind of driven. Uh,
Mhm.
I think another thing too is, and I've had this discussion with a couple girls before about they want to go the wellness route. And, you have to sometimes be very upfront with them about you're probably going to have to gain a little bit more weight and body fat in your improvement season to build that level of muscle you need. And a lot of females don't want to have to do that. They don't want to have to get a little bit bigger in the improvement season, in order to put on that muscle. So I think that's another reason too.
Yeah, I think I love the wellness look on stage, but I don't know a lot of women that want that look off season.
Mhm.
Um, but I always tell people wellness is not a choice. There are probably some athletes that walk the line of like, okay, they've got some good leg development. They probably could push, years of training in PEDs and be wellness. But I think if you're talking about the women at the top of the sport, and I always look at the projection of an athlete over their career. Okay, so if you're just starting out, and you're like, oh, I want to go to the Olympia. Wellness Olympia is so different than a local NPC Olympia. Bikini is not. Um, and so, it just depends on what their goals are. If that's what their goals are, and they have the genetics and they have the predisposition and want to take the time, I would just say that, yeah, the reason there aren't more wellness athletes is because it's it's a very specific division. It's just not everyone fits it. Um, and especially in the United States. I think it's much more common in like South America.
Yeah, I agree. No, I think to your point though, there is a big difference between wellness at like a local regional show and then even wellness at like a national level. Like look at wellness competitors at a regional show and then look at them at a national show. And there's a big gap, right?
Mhm.
So unless we're talking, I know Evan always brings her up. There was that girl at Battle of the Bodies
I
last.
mean, that's a unicorn. That
Yeah,
was her first show ever, and she probably I don't know if she could qualify for the Olympia, but Jesus, she looked insane.
yeah, she was a unicorn for sure. Here's a good one. Okay, what are some common mistakes that we see as coaches that ruin or worsen physiques on show day?
So I actually had a client this weekend. So I had, I think, 4 or 5 competing on Saturday and a couple competing on Sunday. And one of the things that my client said to me was like, I just really appreciate your show day approach. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? She's like, well, my old coach would have me send updates every 45 minutes. I had to send pictures. I had to send pictures of my meals. And it reminded me, like, I was like, well, just so you know, like I used to be more kind of needy on show day. But what I find is that there is an element of you can stress a client out to the point where what's the benefit of you sending me pictures of your meals or pictures every 45 minutes?
Yes.
It ain't going to change the outcome. Um, unless you're, yeah. So like I like to keep stress low on show day. You've got appointments. You've got to be places for the athletes meeting. You got your hair, you got your makeup. You got to remember to eat your meals. How many times I've talked to an athlete at noon on a show day and been like, okay, so where are your macros and where are your fluids at? And they'll be like, oh, I had breakfast and I've only had 16 ounces of water. And I'm like, okay, why? Because I had to do this. I go, I get that, but you need to schedule time for yourself in between this. And their family and friends are there,
Mhm.
whatever it is. The tanning appointment, was running late. Um, so yeah, I try to set up the plan so that show day is very relaxing.
Yeah, no, my exact same approach. And it's funny, I remember, I don't know if you remember, because it was a really short conversation, but I feel like I remember you and me, and I think it was Masa, over the Olympia in Vegas. We were kind of talking about how the whole like coaches send, having you send pictures every, like you said, 30, 45 minutes, like it's almost like it can be overkill. Like I don't know, it's just it can stress an athlete out, right? Like to your point, show day morning is usually it's very anxiety ridden for a lot of people, especially females, when you have your hair appointment, your makeup, your tan. It's a lot, right? And then add in like the whole hurry up and wait sensation that you get backstage. So I feel like as coaches, like it is our job to make an athlete feel as calm as possible, even if we're not there in person. So like I always like to go into before show day, like especially if it's a first time athlete, making sure that they feel really comfortable with exactly what is expected of them on show day, when they're going to eat their meals, when they're, when I want them to touch base with me. That way, come show day, they're not super stressed out, because I feel like that stress, that's the number one killer, I would say, of a show day physique. Like if an athlete is just overly stressed, if they're overly stressed, maybe they are retaining a lot of water, or, to your point, they're forgetting to drink fluids, and then that can kind of throw things off. So I would say I think stress is the number one killer of a show day physique, if I'm being very honest.
Yeah. Stress and not keeping up with what you normally do, your food, your
Yeah.
water, those things, and that's so instead of getting pictures every hour from my athletes, I'll just say, hey, is anything changing? Are you peeing a lot? Or, get me what's going on. Are you bloated? And so that's where you get those feedbacks from. But the physique is not going to change that drastically on show day, especially if you've gone through peak week or done some, peak testing. The other thing is you got to manage. So I had a client this week and be like, Coach, I look terrible. I'm soft. I said, okay, why do you think that? Well, I just took pictures of my hotel room. I said, okay, come down to the lobby and I have a light. Let's, oh, I look great. Okay. It was the soft lighting from the hotel room. You get in your head.
Oh yeah, yeah. Actually, I started whenever I send peak week plans over to my clients, I have a link for like a little portable ring light that you can attach to your phone, because I found for some people it's really hard for them to find good lighting to send pictures on show day. And sometimes I'll have clients that send pictures and I'm like, okay, I'm not trying to be annoying, but I can literally see nothing. Like it's like dark,
A
you see
silhouette.
nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that can kind of toil with the competitor's head too. If they see themselves in that lighting,
Sure.
they look soft. And so I started attaching like a little portable ring light link to their peak week, because yeah, lighting plays a big role there for sure. But I think also, like, if you are an athlete, don't be afraid to let your coach know what you need on show day two ahead of time. Like, if you are one of those people that just is a bit of a nervous Nelly, you may just need a little bit more like time alone. You don't want somebody checking up on you every hour, but some people, they like that. Some people, they want that. So, maybe have that conversation with your coach too ahead of time of like, are you somebody that needs a little bit of like a quieter approach on show day? Or are you somebody that needs a little bit more of that like constant reassurance and checking up on? So that's, something to think about too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's healthy to get an update in the morning from them and maybe have a quick chat and then talk about show day strategies and then just make sure you're available. It's not okay if someone's been prepping you for months and then they're just non-responsive on show day. That is not okay. Do not accept that. As a
Yeah.
prep coach, we know our job starts early on Saturday. So,
Yeah, that's our job. That still always baffles me though to hear. Like, thankfully, I haven't heard stories in a little while about that, but it always has baffled me how people will be like, yeah, my coach, just kind of ghosted me on show day. I'm like, how? Like, I just don't get it. I mean, even if I have a client competing overseas, like, and I have to wake up or set my alarm at a weird time in the night, like, that's just part of our job, right? Like, that's
yeah.
kind of what we sign up for, but it is baffling to still hear that that goes on. Yeah. Do you have any other ones that you wanted to address before we get to
No, I think, that was the only question that was kind of correlated with prep that I got. So I just felt like I'd stick with that one.
Okay, cool. So I've got a couple more good ones we can get to. When should you hire a posing coach?
So my thought on this is right away, work on how to practice. So if you hire, even if you're a year out from your show or 6 months out from your show, have a posing session with a coach so you learn how to stand and how to hold poses, and you can do it on your own for a while. And then as you get into prep, you should probably be posing every day. Here's one thing that I've learned because I see people in my updates and their poses are perfect, but they're not working on endurance. They're learning how to hit a pose, turn on their camera, take a picture, and send the video or the picture. Then I get to the show and they're shaking, they're uncertain, they don't really know their angles very well because they only know how to pose right in front of a camera at 8 in the morning. So now I say, I want you to send me a posing video like you're at prejudging on this day. And so then I can judge and I can say, hey, you're not smiling. You never actually hit your poses. You're fidgeting, you know, posing, especially the higher up you get in the sport, it can break you if you just look out of place and fidgeting, uncertainty. It looks like you're unconfident.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of athletes fall into the trap of just posing for their check-ins. Like that's the only
Mhm.
time they put on the heels, the suit, and pose. And I mean, that's fine if you want to be average good, but like if you want to be standout great on stage, like it's gonna take more than that. And my philosophy is just like you said, I think this the moment you know you want to work towards competing, I would recommend getting a session with a posing coach to at least learn your mandatory poses, your front pose and your back pose, because I always frame it this way with my athletes. It helps me as a coach significantly to do my job much better when I see an athlete in their poses as opposed to just standing straight towards the camera and relaxed, right? Because posing is it's an illusion, right? So if an athlete wants to compete and they're not sending me their progress pictures in their front and their back pose, like it is harder to see, okay, oh, you know what, we really need to work on bringing up the anterior delt or the rear delt, in order to fit the criteria a little bit better. So I always recommend the moment you know you want to compete, get at least a session or two with a posing coach and learn the basics. That way you can practice those on your own and kind of build from there. But I don't know. I mean, I find that athletes, like, I've even had some athletes before they start their first prep, like they've been practicing their posing for months and months and they're really confident with it. Like those are always just like there's a strong correlation between those athletes being the ones that do best at the
Oh,
show.
I'll never forget. So Savannah Finley years ago came to my studio gym and she had never competed before. And
Mhm.
so I said, well, let's just go through some posing. I swear to you, you would have thought she had been to the Olympia. I was like, how did you learn to pose like this? She's like, oh, I've just been watching, prep videos for like months and copying them. And I'm like, well, you're a good athlete because like she literally was hitting every pose and her transitions and everything was perfect. And I was like, yeah, you're good to go. Like that's pretty rare, but she had already put in that work.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like some people too, because I don't know if this is the case. I feel like she had like a dance background or something, but a lot of times people who do have
Yes,
like,
she
that
did.
dance background or
Maybe it
cheer.
was gymnastics. She had muscular legs, so it might have been
Yeah.
gymnastics.
Yeah, you sometimes those athletes with that type of like background, they just naturally, I mean, they enjoy posing a little bit more, so they practice it more. But like, I mean, there are athletes all the time that, I know you and I will see that like they have the like quote unquote the coolest, maybe sometimes the best physiques, but then they get on stage and they kind of look like Bambi and they don't really know how to hold their poses and they just look a little awkward. And like sometimes those are the same athletes, like they have a great physique, but they're moved out immediately just because they don't really have that like it factor and they look awkward. So yeah, posing definitely matters. I think that's one of those things you should definitely invest in early on within your journey. And you don't have to be in prep necessarily, or even, I wouldn't even say you have to be 100% sure if you want to compete or not before you start posing. Sometimes it just can help to get a couple sessions in just to have it, just in case.
That's it. Yeah, so that's why I always say do it right away because it's like a skill. So once you have the skill mastered, you can practice at your own pace, your own schedule. But yeah, and you might find a posing coach that you get along with and one that you don't. So, try to find some stuff. And honestly, there's a lot of free resources online. Like
Yeah.
I think we even have a free posing guide. So like you don't necessarily have to like put out a bunch of money if you just want to get started.
Yeah, and I think don't quote me, but I want to say I'm sure more people have this, but I think Phoebe Hagen with like the posing portal, I think there's like
Mhm.
a posing light option where it's like you can kind of purchase maybe it's not one-on-one coaching, but it's like a little kind of little segue into it. So, and hey, with the holidays coming around, it can be a good opportunity to like ask for something like that for Christmas, you never know. So, yeah, all right, you want to do one more?
Yeah, one more and we're good.
So, okay, so last one is we'll kind of okay, so this one it says overall tips for like post-show blues, but I think we could make that a whole topic within itself. So let's break it down into like what would you say is your number one or two tips for a client like to help them to navigate that like post-show blues if they experience that.
I mean, I think the biggest one is setting that next goal before the show is over. And that doesn't mean it has to be another show, but like setting a goal to like have a successful reverse, setting a goal to get your calories to this number, setting a goal to look good for this vacation. Um, I think the blues part of it is the lack of direction because I experienced it first as an athlete before I did bodybuilding when my baseball season would end in college because I had so much structure. I knew when I had to be at study hall. I knew when I had to be at practice. I knew when I had to be at weight training. We had games, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, I just remember my freshman year, that last game happened. And then because the NCAA had rules, like you literally can't have practice. So like the season was over.
Mhm.
And like I remember like, what do I do? Class is done. I don't know what to do. And so a couple of the other baseball players, like we literally would go to the baseball field, which we weren't supposed to be there, and we would still just goof around and play baseball. Like it was like we didn't know what to do with ourselves. And I think with bodybuilding, I experienced it my first time I did a first bodybuilding show. I had for a year, I did a 1 year prep, not prep, but like 1 year. I said, I'm going to do the show next year. I hired a coach. I did a building phase, da, 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 da. Did the show. I won. And I remember going into the gym Monday and being like, what do I do today?
Yeah.
Like I felt directionless.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is something I think every competitor experiences it, especially after that first season, it kind of hits you like a ton of bricks. No, so I would agree with you. I think setting those goals, like right afterwards, it doesn't have to be another show, but like outlining some goals for yourself immediately, afterwards. And then I think, another thing too is I think part of what contributes pretty badly towards post-show blues is when people, within the first 1 to 2 to 3 weeks, they gain, 10, 15 pounds, and then they feel like, oh my God, I don't even look like I just competed. And then that can kind of contribute to like that, that depression and that post-show blues. So, I mean, I think another way to help to negate the post-show blues is like stay on a plan, have a nice diligent reverse diet, stay with your coach, make sure you stay really structured. Don't just because the show is over doesn't mean you need to let go from everything you've been doing up until that point, right? Obviously, food's going to go up, cardio is going to come down, but I generally don't recommend losing sight of your prep routine right off the get go, because I think that can really dig some people into a really deep hole really quickly if they just, okay, show's over, so now I'm going to change up my entire routine. So I think that
This
can be.
has been the biggest difference, Lexi, for me as an athlete, because I noticed you when your last show, you didn't, nothing's changed, right? Well, and so you put out a YouTube video, which I didn't watch yesterday, called New Goals. What are the new goals?
Oh, okay. My little yeah. So I talked a little bit about, and I know like after North Americans, like we had kind of discussed maybe you were like maybe you should do another like local show, just to get more experience with Fit Model. And so I shared in my video, I was like, I've been really thinking about it, and I'm like, I like in my gut, I just feel like right now having so much fun like coaching and like being on this side of things. And not that you can't do both, not that I can't compete and coach at the same time, but I'm just having a lot more fun like right now, just being in the midst of like going to shows and, you know, doing that side of things. And then also just focusing on like going into the gym and being strong. I'm doing a little bit of like Brett's programming right now. And so that was my YouTube video, is just like deciding, you know what, I'm not going to put any pressure, at least for this year, to get on stage again. Even though like I probably could for Fit Model pretty like easily. It's not like I'd have to like prep again to do so. I just decided, you know what, I want to kind of focus on coaching and like being all in with my athletes. Again, not that I wasn't like, or not that I wouldn't be if I got on stage, but that was kind of what that video was about.
Okay, yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And I think for you, it's obviously a lifestyle. And
Yeah.
another thing that I did to help kind of fix the mindset of like the blues was I didn't look at the competition as the end of something.
Yeah.
To me, it's just another part of the phase of my life that is being fit. I'm still going to do cardio on Monday. I'm still going to hit some protein on Monday. I'm still going to go lift. That to me, what I've learned is that makes me feel good.
No, 100%. I agree. I don't look at like I'm just like you. I don't look at show day as like it's not an end date. It's not like it's not the end goal either, right? Because even, if I compete at a show, you take that feedback and then you improve and you move on from there. Like it's not an end date or an end goal. And I also think another thing that, I don't know, may not be surprising, but I think this contributes severely to post-show blues too, is if you have like a vacation right after your show, a lot of times that's never good, because you go on that vacation. For a lot of people, they have a lot of fun. They lose all their structure. They lose all of their, their routine. They gain weight. They come back. And then it's like, it's that double-edged sword of like, okay, the show's over, that awesome vacation is over, now what, right? So I know that may sound counterintuitive to like what some
Yeah.
people believe, because I know some people, they want to have something like after they're prepped to celebrate, I get that, but you kind of have to zoom out and like, hey, I'm all for scheduling a vacation to celebrate, but personally, I would wait to do that at least like a good month or two post show and not immediately right after the show.
100%.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah, I feel good about it. I feel like we answered a lot of questions. And so we didn't ask a question. So if you guys are still around.
We didn't.
Yeah.
So let's ask one now, because then we'll know who the real.
Here's what I want to know. Candy corn, yay or nay?
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, wait, what are your thoughts? I think I know what your answer is going to be.
I'm obsessed with candy corn in all forms. I love candy pumpkins. I eat all of it. I can't keep it in the house because I will just grab a handful every time I walk by.
I was gonna say I love candy corn as well, but it's always been one of those candies that I feel like it's so sweet that like I can't eat a lot of it, but I keep going into Publix every day and I see they have their whole like counter of candy corn and I'm like, oh, it looks so good. But yeah, I am team candy corn. I think it's good. I don't know why.
It is a very polarizing candy for some reason. To me, it's just
It
the
is.
consistency, the sweetness. Yeah.
It is good. They actually even, I don't know if they make them anymore, but I remember this was probably like 10 years ago. They made M&M made a candy corn M&M. Like it was an M&M and
I remember that.
and it was really good. But
Yep.
yeah, I think candy corn is pretty solid. I like that question. And also for those of you that keep asking, we will have Command the Stage dates eventually soon.
Oh, whoa. I think I have the date.
Oh, you do?
Mm,
We want to say give them, okay, let's say time, give them like the month, maybe. So we'll start.
March,
Okay, that's what I figured. So March. Okay.
March 20 something.
Okay, so end of March for those of you guys listening. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I've had several athletes on my roster already, and they're like, let us know. We want to come. So
Yeah, we are locking in the dates. We're locking in the location. It's going to be spectacular.
cool. Awesome. All
Dr.
right,
Joe's coming back. Yeah.
cool. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. If you're listening and you're enjoying this episode, tag us on Instagram. We love seeing that. And
Yep.
have a great rest of your week.